What if the world Iron Man knew, a world of high-tech battles, skyscrapers, and calculated genius, suddenly collided with something darker, older, and utterly incomprehensible? What if Tony Stark, the man who built his destiny with iron and fire, was thrust into a small town where the rules of reality bent, where shadows whispered, and monsters lurked in the very air? The streets of Hawkins are quiet tonight, but beneath the surface, a darkness stretches, pulsates, and hungers. And now, a figure in red and gold descends from the sky, drawn not by chance, but by something far beyond his understanding. What awaits him in the Upside Down? And more importantly, what waits in him? What would happen if Tony Stark's greatest technology collided with a force even he couldn't calculate? The night was still. Hawkins, Indiana, seemed like any other quiet town under a thick blanket of fog, the faint hum of streetlights brushing over empty sidewalks. But Tony Stark wasn't here for sightseeing. He had been tracking an anomalous energy spike, one that flickered in readings no lab had been able to explain. Stark's fingers danced over holographic controls, scanning, filtering, analyzing. He had dealt with alien tech, quantum anomalies, and sentient AI, but this felt different. As he hovered above the town in the Iron Man suit, a shiver ran down his spine, not from fear. He would never admit that, but from curiosity. That dangerous, addictive kind that always led him into chaos. The senses went haywire as he neared a seemingly ordinary house on the outskirts. The readings spiked violently, and a whisper, almost like a voice, brushed the edges of his consciousness. "Tony, okay," he muttered to himself, his usual humor now laced with tension. "Either my AI is malfunctioning, or someone's been messing with the multiverse again." The house was silent, too silent. Stark's HUD highlighted subtle movements, heat signatures. Human, maybe, but distorted. He landed softly, boots touching the grass, and activated the suit's scanning protocol. The air shifted, the temperature dropped, and then the ground beneath him trembled, not a quake, but something else, something wrong. A shadow lunged from the corner of the yard. Not human, not exactly. Stark barely had time to react before his repulsors fired, illuminating the figure in a blinding arc of red and blue light. The creature shrieked a sound that shouldn't exist in this world, and vanished, leaving behind only a residue of cold, black mist that crawled over the lawn like liquid darkness. "What the hell is this place?" Stark whispered, scanning, calculating. "I thought I'd seen everything," but the HUD flickered, showing multiple readings overlapping, as if reality itself were folding. And then a faint, familiar sound reached his ears, a child's voice, calling for help. "Mike, Will." The voice echoed faintly through the mist. Stark's eyes narrowed. He recognized the names from intelligence reports, cases of disappearances, strange occurrences, creatures beyond comprehension. But Stark didn't have time for doubt. Whoever or whatever was in this house had crossed a line he didn't understand yet. He stepped inside. The hallway was ordinary at first glance, photos, peeling wallpaper, an eerie stillness, and then the walls flickered, shadows bent against the light. A door at the end of the hall pulsed with a strange black energy. Stark approached, cautious but intrigued, his mind racing with calculations, probabilities, escape routes. He reached out. The door reacted, and in an instant, the world shifted. The air turned thick, oppressive, and the walls stretched beyond the normal confines of space. Stark stumbled, his suit compensating for the sudden spatial anomaly. But his eyes caught what no technology could explain. A parallel world, dark and inverted, where tendrils of black mist clawed at the sky, and a monstrous silhouette loomed in the distance. The Upside Down. Stark knew the legends if they were true. And if they weren't, he would find out soon enough. Then he heard it, a scream, high-pitched, desperate, cutting through the dark like a knife. Stark bolted toward the sound, repulsors blazing, scanning for heat signatures. The town of Hawkins became a labyrinth of horrors, each corner revealing creatures with impossible anatomy, eyes that gleamed with malice, and whispers that promised madness. "Stay calm," Stark muttered under his breath. "Focus, just another bad Tuesday." But the deeper he went, the more the world warped around him, and the more he realized this wasn't just a threat to Hawkins, it was a threat to everything Tony Stark had ever known. And in the darkness, glowing eyes fixed on him, and a voice, ancient and hungry, whispered, "You don't belong here. Yet you came." The air grew heavy, the shadows shifted. Stark knew one thing with terrifying clarity: leaving this world alive was no longer guaranteed. And somewhere, in the twisting corridors of this nightmarish town, A child waited, perhaps the key to everything. Perhaps a trepan Stark had to decide, save them, or survive. And in that moment, Stark's usual bravado faltered. Because this world wasn't just hostile, it was hungry. Could Tony Stark survive a world that didn't obey the laws of physics, morality, or logic? The darkness pressed in from every angle, heavy and suffocating. As Stark's repulsors carved paths of light through the thick, oppressive mist, each step was a negotiation with gravity, space, and time itself. The Upside Down did not follow normal rules. Hallways stretched impossibly, turning corners into infinite loops, walls breathing with a life of their own. Stark's HUD struggled to maintain stability, displaying overlapping heat signatures that made it impossible to tell which direction the screaming came from. "What am I even doing here?" Stark muttered aloud, trying to ground himself. Normally, he thrived in chaos. But this was like being inside a nightmare someone else had meticulously designed. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to launch a full assault and clear a path back to the sky. But he couldn't, not while a child's voice was calling, faint, terrified, and somehow familiar. He followed the sound, moving cautiously. The air smelled of ozone and decay, a combination that made his stomach twist. Shadows twisted along the walls, contorting like living things, as if watching him, testing him, predicting his next move. For a moment, Stark felt small. The feeling was foreign, unwelcome. He hated it. He wasn't used to being outmatched, not by anyone. A sudden movement made him spin. From the corner of the mist emerged something massive, more than a man, more than any animal, more than he could possibly have predicted. Its limbs bent at impossible angles, eyes glowing like molten coal, mouth stretching unnaturally wide. The Demogorgon. Stark had heard reports, legends, but nothing in his life had prepared him for this. He raised his hands, firing a burst of repulsor energy. The creature recoiled slightly, but it didn't flee. It studied him, calculating in its own alien way, before vanishing into the mist like smoke. The relief was brief. Stark knew it wasn't gone. It was waiting, patient, hunting. He pressed forward, finally finding the source of the voice. A small room, walls pulsating with the same black energy he'd seen earlier. And there, huddled in the corner, was Byers, pale, shivering, eyes wide with fear. "Tony," the boy whispered. You came." Stark's chest tightened, a rare pang of vulnerability piercing through his armor. "Kid, I don't know how I got here, but I'm not leaving you behind. Not now, not ever." Will looked around, pointing toward the corner where the black mist seemed to move independently. "It's here. It wants me. It's always watching. Don't let it touch me." Before Stark could respond, the ground shook violently, and the walls trembled. Tendrils of darkness shot up from the floor, twisting toward them like serpents. Stark reacted instinctively, firing repulsors in rapid succession, disintegrating the first wave. But for every tendril he destroyed, two more appeared. "This is not like anything I've fought before," he muttered under his breath. "This is alive." He grabbed Will and ran, the room warping around them as if reality itself resented their escape. Shadows reached for them, hands made of mist and nightmares, whispering threats, mocking voices, some familiar, some entirely alien. Stark fired constantly, but even his energy couldn't stop the world from bending. They emerged into a larger space, what seemed like the heart of the Upside Down in Hawkins. Buildings twisted, streets turned back on themselves, and a figure emerged from the darkness. 11. Her nose bled slightly, her eyes intense, focused. She raised her hands, sending a wave of psychic energy that cleared a path. "Tony Stark," she said, cautious, studying him as if he were another anomaly. "You're not supposed to be here." "Neither are you," Stark replied sharply, scanning her abilities. "But it looks like we're on the same side. For now." Before they could plan, the ground cracked violently, and the massive Demogorgon appeared again. Its roar echoed, shaking the very air. Stark's jaw tightened. The boy in his arms, the psychic girl, standing her ground, it all depended on him. And yet, he realized something chilling. This wasn't just a battle of strength. This world had its own rules, and every misstep could cost them everything. As he launched himself toward the creature, repulsors blazing, a thought struck him, a terrifying question that chilled him to the core. If the Upside Down could manipulate space, time, and perception, could it manipulate him? Could it turn his own mind, his own fears, against him before the fight even began? And from the shadows, a whisper carried on the wind. "You're too late. You can't save them all." What happens when even a genius like Tony Stark realizes that brains and tech might not be enough to survive? The Demogorgon's roar reverberated through the twisted streets of the Upside Down, shaking the distorted buildings and making the very air vibrate with its feral energy. Tony Stark propelled himself forward, repulsors cutting arcs through the darkness, the red and gold glow piercing the thick black mist. 11 floated beside him, eyes glowing with psychic intensity, shaping the air itself to slow the creature's advance. But even together, they were just scratching at the surface of a force that defied understanding. Will's grip on Stark's arm was tight, trembling, and Tony realized just how small, fragile, and human the boy was amidst this nightmare. He clenched his jaw and muttered under his breath, "I've fought aliens, gods, AI rebellions, but nothing like this." They reached a broken intersection of streets, the remnants of Hawkins town square, twisted into impossible angles, shadows moving unnaturally across the cracked asphalt. The Demogorgon lunged, and Stark had to dive, the boy nearly slipping from his grasp as the creature's claws shredded the ground where they'd just stood. 11 focused, forcing the Demogorgon back, but it roared in frustration, a sound that seemed to warp the very laws of sound waves. Stark realized something terrifying. The creature wasn't just physical, it could manipulate the environment, warp perception, and even affect the mind. Every corner, every shadow, every distorted echo could be a trap. Stark's HUD flickered violently, catching something, a heat signature, faint, but moving. Another creature, or something human. He couldn't be sure. Hawkins had already lost children to this darkness, and the thought churned in his stomach. He couldn't afford mistakes. 11. I need to know how many of them are here. Her brow furrowed. I can feel them. Many, too many. They are everywhere, watching, waiting. Tony paused, his mind racing. He thought of his own city, his battles in New York, the alien invasions, the Hydra attacks. Every threat had rules. Every threat could be studied, predicted, and ultimately overcome. But the Upside Down had no rules, or worse, it made its own. A shriek split the air, cutting through the darkness, and a shadowy figure darted past them. Stark's senses barely registered it, a blur, human-shaped, but moving in ways that made his stomach twist. "That's no kid I've ever seen," he muttered, following the blur instinctively. They turned a corner and stumbled into a clearing that defied expectation. Trees twisted impossibly into the sky, roots like black veins curling across the cracked ground. In the center, a portal pulsed faintly, the black tendrils of the Upside Down reaching outward like hands trying to pull the world into itself. And from the portal, a familiar figure emerged, Jonathan Byers, ragged, exhausted, but alive. "Tony," Jonathan gasped, stumbling toward them. You came from another world. I don't understand." Tony shook his head. "Kid, trust me, I'm still figuring that part out. But right now, we've got bigger problems." The portal pulsed again, and the Demogorgon reappeared, more furious, more terrifying than before. Its eyes seemed to burn with intelligence, tracking every move, anticipating every maneuver. Stark's mind raced, calculating angles, velocity, energy output, and structural weaknesses. But the more he calculated, the more unstable the world became. The buildings bent, the shadows multiplied, and his own suit's HUD started to fail. Will whimpered, clutching Stark's armor. They're everywhere," he whispered, his voice trembling. Stark glanced at him, feeling the weight of responsibility settle deep in his chest. These weren't soldiers, superheroes, or trained fighters. These were kids, lost in a nightmare that defied explanation. And Stark was the only shield between them and oblivion. He activated the suit's thrusters at full capacity, launching himself into the air, repulsors flaring as he tried to draw the Demogorgon away from the portal. 11 followed, pushing psychic energy like waves, holding the creature back, but it adapted, ducking, dodging, anticipating. Then something unexpected happened. A second portal opened nearby, smaller, but pulsating with a different energy warmer, almost inviting. From it, a figure stepped into the Upside Down. Not a kid, not a monster, but someone, human, someone who radiated a strange confidence, scanning the battlefield with precise calculation. Tony's sensors tried to identify the suit, but it was off the charts, far beyond anything in his database. "Wait, that's impossible," he muttered, his mind raced. Another Stark, another hero from his own world, or a trick. The Demogorgon hesitated, a low growl vibrating through the air. eyes darting between Tony and the newcomer. Stark realized with dawning horror that this upside down didn't just create monsters, it created challenges tailored to the mind, designed to break the strongest wills. And now, something or someone had arrived to test him further. Eleven's eyes widened. Tony, be careful. It's watching us, all of us. And at that moment, the Demogorgon lunged once more, faster than before, while the shadows of the upside down began crawling toward them like living liquid, threatening to engulf everything in its path. Stark knew one thing with chilling certainty: if they didn't act immediately, Hawkins would be lost, and he might never make it out alive. What if Tony Stark realized that brute force alone couldn't save a world that didn't obey physics or morality? The air in the upside down seemed to pulse with malevolence, a rhythm that synchronized with Stark's own heartbeat. Shadows writhed like living tendrils, wrapping around broken buildings and fractured streets, and the Demogorgon's roar echoed endlessly, bouncing off twisted walls in a way that disoriented his senses. Tony's HUD flickered erratically. Repulsor readings, spatial data, even his suit's life support systems were unstable in ways he'd never imagined. He had fought gods, he had faced alien invasions, but nothing in his extensive battlescape had prepared him for this. He pivoted in mid-air, repulsors flaring, propelling him toward the newly arrived figure at the second portal. Whoever, or whatever they were, they moved with precision, a dangerous calm that screamed experience. Tony's instincts screamed a warning, and for the first time, he considered that he might not fully understand the rules of this battle. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice echoing oddly in the thick, dark air. The stranger turned slowly. Stark's eyes widened as the ash-hued trident failed to catalogue the armor. Sleek, black and silver plating shimmered under the dim, sickly light, with energy readings off the charts. Stark's analytical mind raced. This was not a Stark design, not anything he recognized, and yet it carried an unmistakable signature of genius. The figure's voice cut through the oppressive gloom. "I'm here to stabilize the breach, and you, Stark, are complicating things." Before Stark could reply, the Demogorgon lunged again, faster than the last assault, claws slicing through the air. The stranger moved like a shadow, energy blasts striking with pinpoint precision, tearing into the creature, pushing it back, but it was relentless. And then the ground trembled violently, black mist rising like a tide, swallowing the streets, the buildings, and even parts of Stark's suit sensors. "Focus, kid," Tony barked to Will, who clung desperately to his armor. "Stay low, stay quiet, and don't think about anything except surviving." Will nodded, wide-eyed, shivering as the oppressive darkness pressed closer. Stark felt a pang. He couldn't dismiss a vulnerability he rarely allowed himself. The boy's fear was raw, unfiltered, and Stark's protective instincts kicked in fully. He realized the stakes weren't just about defeating a monster. They were about saving innocence from a world that had none. 11 stepped closer, her psychic energy forming shimmering shields around them, struggling to contain the black tendrils that whipped and writhed with sentient malevolence. "We can't hold it forever," she warned, sweat on her brow. "It's feeding on fear, feeding on you." Tony's eyes narrowed, feeding on fear. The upside down wasn't just a physical threat, it was a mental one. He clenched his jaw, scanning the battlefield, calculating energy, expenditure, trajectory, and probability. Every instinct screamed that they were outmatched, but Stark never backed down. "Not then, not ever. Then we make it feed on something else," he muttered, activating his suit's experimental mode, a combination of repulsor bursts and graviton recalibration. Streams of red and gold light tore through the shadows, illuminating fragments of the upside down in stark detail. For a moment, it recoiled, the tendrils faltering as if confused by the sudden assault. But then, the Demogorgon roared again, a sound that seemed to pierce reality itself. Stark realized, with a shiver that ran deep into his bones, that brute force alone wouldn't win. Not here, not in this world. It required cunning, strategy, and understanding the rules he hadn't yet learned. The stranger in black and silver armor moved closer, aligning themselves beside Stark. "We have limited time," they said. "The portal is unstable. If it collapses, the upside down will consume this town and you won't make it out alive." Stark's mind raced. Limited time, the portal. Everything hinged on it. If he could stabilize the breach, maybe they could save Hawkins. But if he failed, he'd be trapped in a world that didn't just defy physics, defied survival itself. From the corner of his vision, he saw it. shadows moving faster than light, tendrils wrapping around buildings, the distant, echoing laughter of something intelligent and cruel. Will whimpered again, clutching his armor. 11's shield flickered under the strain, and Tony understood, with horrifying clarity, that the battle wasn't just physical, it was a war for their very minds. Then the ground beneath them cracked, a massive fissure opened, tendrils of darkness spewing upward like a living fountain. The portal at the center pulsed violently, black energy licking outward, threatening to swallow them all. Stark's jaw tightened. If they didn't act now, Hawkins would vanish out with it, any hope of escape. He glanced at the stranger, 11, and Will. The words formed in his mind, sharp and resolute. We fight, or we die. And in that moment, as the shadows surged and the air trembled with a force beyond comprehension, Stark realized something terrifying. The Upside Down wasn't just a battlefield. It was aware, it knew them, it was learning, and it was ready to exploit every weakness. What if the very world Tony Stark relied on logic, calculation, predictability turned against him in ways he couldn't anticipate? The fissure yawned before them, black tendrils writhing like living serpents, pulsating with an energy that seemed almost sentient. Stark hovered above it, repulsors burning, every system of his suit screaming alerts he could barely interpret. The stranger in black and silver armor moved fluidly beside him, energy pulsing along their gauntlets. 11's psychic shields shimmered under pressure, bending but not breaking, and Will clung to Stark, eyes wide, barely breathing, yet unbroken in spirit. Tony's mind raced. Physics, trajectories, energy outputs, meaningless here. Every calculation was undermined by the Upside Down's fluid reality. The shadows weren't just enemies, they were an extension of the world itself, constantly adapting, twisting, and feeding off fear. One wrong move, and they'd be swallowed whole. Tony, 11 said sharply, the portal, it's weakening, but it's unstable. You have to do something, now. Yeah, Stark muttered, scanning the fissure. I've got one shot before this place folds in on itself. Something tells me hitting it with a repulsor blast won't be enough. He swallowed hard. His mind raced through every possible strategy. Quantum displacement, graviton inversion. He needed to stabilize the portal and contain the creatures pouring through, all at once. Impossible, or maybe just barely possible. A flash of movement caught his attention. From the shadows, more tendrils slithered, this time faster, larger, intelligent in their approach. They weren't mindless, they coordinated, cutting off escape routes, anticipating his maneuvers. Stark realized, stomach tightening, that the Upside Down wasn't just a place, it was a predator, and he was bait. The stranger in black and silver armor glanced at him. I can hold some of them back, they said, voice calm, measured, almost to calm. But you need to focus on the core. I won't survive long in this environment if you don't act. Tony's jaw tightened. Then, let's make it count. He dove toward the pulsating core of the portal, repulsors flaring, light streaking through the black mist. 11 followed, her psychic energy pushing the shadows aside, buying him precious seconds. Will clung tightly to Stark's back, his small hands gripping armor that radiated warmth and strength in the chaos. The portal pulsed violently, and a low hum filled the air, like the heartbeat of the Upside Down itself. The shadows recoiled momentarily, as if recognizing the danger, then surged forward again, faster, more aggressive. Tony gritted his teeth. One miscalculation could send the portal collapsing on top of them. He unleashed a concentrated burst of repulsor energy directly into the portal, targeting the pulsating heart. The fissure shuddered, tendrils screeching in agony as energy radiated outward. Stark adjusted in mid-air, calculating the exact angles, the feedback loops, the environmental pressure. Every variable mattered. Every second counted. Suddenly, a tendril lashed out, wrapping around the stranger's arm. They hissed, energy flaring, and Tony realized that even allies were expendable in this place. 11 screamed, psychic energy surging, pushing the tendrils back, but more emerged. The portal pulsed brighter, more violently, threatening to consume everything. Tony's HUD beeped erratically. His suit was reaching its limits. Systems overloaded, repulsors sputtered, graviton fields fluctuated unpredictably, and then he saw it. A second portal opening, smaller, closer to where Will had been standing. From it, shadows began emerging, more human-like, moving with terrifying coordination. He froze for a fraction of a second. Could it be other victims, other lost children, or something worse? He didn't have time to think. Time was the enemy. Every moment the portal pulsed, the Upside Down's grip strengthened. Hawkins could vanish in an instant. Stark gritted his teeth and made a decision. "Hold on, everyone," he muttered, voice low but resolute. "This next move might kill us all or save everything." He aimed the final concentrated blast at the heart of the portal. Light flared, shadows screamed, and the air itself seemed to warp around them. The fissure shuddered violently. Then a shockwave erupted, pushing everyone backward. The tendrils recoiled. The portal pulsed one last time and, then, miraculously, began to stabilize. For a heartbeat, the world seemed still. Hawkins' twisted streets reflected the dim glow of the stabilized portal, and the shadows retreated slightly, uncertain, cautious. But Stark knew better than to celebrate. The Upside Down never truly surrendered. From the second portal, a figure stumbled forward, young girl, soaked in darkness, trembling. Stark's heart sank. Another victim, perhaps, or worse, an agent of the Upside Down, testing them, feeding off fear. 11 immediately moved to protect her, psychic shields flaring. Tony looked at the stabilized portal, then back at the girl. The same thought hit him simultaneously. Even if they survived this moment, the battle was far from over. The Upside Down had eyes everywhere, and every action they took was just another move in a game Tony didn't fully understand. And somewhere, in the deepest shadows, a presence stirred, whispering promises of power and despair. It had been patient, it had been watching, and now, it knew exactly how to test Tony Stark and everyone he had sworn to protect. What if saving Hawkins meant confronting not just the monsters outside, but the darkness inside your own mind? The air around the portal shimmered with unstable energy, each pulse a reminder that the Upside Down was alive, aware, and hungry. Tony Stark hovered, suit systems screaming, repulsors sparking, while 11's psychic shields flickered under the strain. Quill clung tightly to Stark, exhausted but unbroken, eyes darting at every shadow. The stranger in Blackhand's silver armor moved with lethal precision, cutting through tendrils that tried to claw their way forward. Yet even they seemed stretched thin, fighting an impossible tide. Tony's mind raced. The portal stabilized but barely. The shadows were retreating, for now, but he knew better than to trust that lull. This world was patient, it was intelligent, it didn't attack blindly, it was waiting for them to falter. "Tony," 11 said, voice sharp and urgent, "we can't hold it here forever. The portal is like a wound, it's healing, or it's preparing something worse." He clenched his jaw, scanning the portal core. Black energy pulsed in rhythmic waves, almost breathing, almost sentient. "I get it, kid, but what's the alternative? Do nothing and let Hawkins disappear." He fired a low-level repulsor sweep, watching as the shadows recoiled, but they were far from gone. "We push forward. Every second we waste makes it stronger." From the corner of his vision, Tony noticed movement in the stabilized shadows, a smaller figure, darting unnaturally, almost like it was testing him. His suit sensors barely picked up a human signature. Could it be another child, or something worse? He felt a pang of responsibility tighten in his chest. Every life in Hawkins might hang on his decisions right now. Then the figure stepped into view, a young girl, drenched in darkness, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and familiarity. 11 gasped, recognizing her immediately. "Collie," she whispered, protective energy surging around them. Tony's brow furrowed. Another child, another unknown variable in a world that already had too many. The Demogorgon roared from the mist, a sound that seemed to bend space, vibrating directly inside Tony's skull. He instinctively launched himself forward, repulsors blazing, energy streaking through the unnatural night. Collie reacted instantly, manipulating shadows to slow the creature's advance. 11 joined, a psychic shield flaring and expanding, forcing the monster to retreat temporarily. Tony realized, with a sinking certainty, that brute force wasn't enough. The Upside Down adapted. It learned. Every blast, every strike, every maneuver was catalogued and counted. The only way to survive was to think several steps ahead, to anticipate a predator that could predict the impossible. "Listen up," Tony muttered to the group, voice steady but tense. "We need a plan that doesn't just rely on strength. This thing adapts. It studies patterns. That means we change the rules." He sketched out a rapid strategy in his mind, activating holographic interfaces inside his helmet. Graviton recalibration, energy oscillation, layered repulsor, pulses in unpredictable sequences. If he timed it right, they could destabilize the portal and push the creatures back. 11 nodded, understanding instantly. "We can synchronize," she said. "I'll amplify your energy with my psychic field, but we have to act as one." Tony took a deep breath, eyes narrowing. Every instinct screamed that failure would be catastrophic. The Demogorgon advanced again, larger tendrils of black mist spreading like wildfire. Will whimpered softly, clutching Tony's armor, eyes wide with terror. "It's coming," he whispered. Stark's chest tightened. He had promised to protect these kids. He couldn't fail. Then, a sudden ripple ran through the air, the presence that had been watching, patient, intelligent, calculating. It spoke, not in words, but in a whisper that resonated inside Tony's mind. "You can't save them all." Tony's vision blurred momentarily as doubt flickered across his mind. The darkness wasn't just outside, it was inside him now, testing his fears, his guilt, the countless lives he'd failed before. Hawkins was not just a battleground, it was a mirror of his own doubts, magnified, twisted. He gritted his teeth. "I don't care what you are," he muttered, voice low and fierce. "I'm not leaving anyone behind." With that, he surged forward, repulsors and graviton pulses firing in chaotic brilliance, shadows screaming as they recoiled. 11 synchronized, amplifying his attacks, while Collie and the stranger in Black Hand's silver armor cut off escape routes, herding the creatures toward the fissure. The portals shuddered violently, energy pulsing faster, tendrils writhing and striking in desperation. Will's small voice trembled. "Tony, is it going to be okay?" Tony's jaw tightened. "It will be, I will make it okay." But just as hope surged, the Demogorgon's roar reached a new, horrifying pitch. From the portal's edge, something larger stirred, moving with intelligence, with patience, with intent. Stark's stomach dropped as he realized the truth. The Upside Down was escalating. It wasn't just defending itself, it was preparing to fight back with everything it had. And from the shadows, a whisper echoed, deeper this time, chillingly clear. "You will break, or everything you love will die." What if the enemy wasn't just the monsters around you, but the darkness inside the very world you were trying to save? The air of the Upside Down pulsed violently, a rhythm that matched Tony Stark's racing heartbeat. Every shadow, every tendril of black mist, seemed to breathe with intent, stretching and writhing as if alive. Stark hovered above the fractured streets, repulsors blazing in rapid succession, while 11's psychic shields flared to their limit. Collie and the stranger in Black Hand silver armor moved in tandem, carving paths through the shadows with precise, almost surgical strikes. And Will, he held on, trembling, clutching Tony's armor with small, desperate hands, his eyes wide as he watched the world around him twist and writhe into impossible shapes. Tony's HUD flickered violently. System errors, energy, feedback loops, graviton field, instability. He had calculated trajectories for missile strikes in space, energy output for citywide battles, but here, none of that mattered. Here, physics itself was a suggestion, and every calculation was a gamble. The portal pulsed violently, sending ripples of black energy outward, distorting reality in waves. Shadows surged forward, moving faster, more coordinated than before. Stark realized something terrifying. The Upside Down wasn't just a place, it was a predator, and it was learning from them. "Tony," 11 shouted, her psychic energy straining. "We can't hold it much longer. The portal, if it collapses now, it will consume everything." "I know, kid," he muttered, teeth gritted, "but we can't just throw energy at it. It's feeding on fear, feeding on hesitation. We need to trick it, confuse it, hit it where it can't predict." From the corner of his vision, he saw movement, a new wave of shadows, smaller, quicker, almost human-like, darting toward them. He barely had time to react, firing repulsors that tore through the advancing forms, but more kept coming. It was as if the Upside Down had learned their patterns in real time, adapting with terrifying speed. Callie stepped forward, slicing through tendrils with a flick of her hand, her eyes fierce and unyielding. "We need to push it into the portal. All of it," she shouted. Tony nodded, quickly recalculating. "Right, but we don't just push, we destabilize first. If we overload the energy field, the portal will collapse on them without collapsing on us." He gritted his teeth, flipping switches on his HUD. Every system in his suit pushed to the limit, energy surging through repulsors, graviton fields, and experimental oscillators. 11 and Collie synchronized, psychic and shadow energy converging with Stark's mechanical force. The air shimmered violently, black tendrils recoiling, the Demogorgon screeching in confusion. For a moment, they gained ground. The portal's pulse slowed. The shadows hesitated, uncertain. Stark's heart pounded. Victory felt within reach. But then the largest, most terrifying presence emerged. From the deepest recesses of the portal, a form took shape, tall, dark, and impossibly twisted. With limbs stretching beyond comprehension, eyes glowing like molten fire. Its voice wasn't a sound. It reverberated in Stark's mind. "You cannot win. You are nothing here." Will screamed, clutching Stark, and Tony felt a wave of doubt crash over him. His mind flashed to New York, to the battles he had fought, the lives lost, the friends he couldn't save. Am I enough? The question clawed at him, threatening to paralyze him mid-flight. But then he saw the children, 11, Will and Collie, fighting beside him, unbroken, determined. He realized something crucial. Survival wasn't about being enough, it was about refusing to fail. It was about action, not hesitation. He fired a massive, concentrated pulse directly at the portal's core, while 11 amplified it with psychic energy, and Callie herded the remaining shadows toward the fissure. The energy collided with the portal, sending shockwaves of light and darkness through the Upside Down. Shadows screamed. The Demogorgon roared, and the twisted figure from the portal flailed violently as the energy pulse hit it head-on. Time seemed to stretch. The world warped around them, and for a heartbeat, Stark wondered if they had pushed too far, if the Upside Down would retaliate by consuming everything they loved. But slowly, agonizingly, the portal stabilized. Shadows receded. The twisted figure dissolved into black mist, and the oppressive air lifted slightly. Will's trembling hands relaxed, 11's shields dimmed but held, and Collie looked at Stark with a mixture of awe and exhaustion. Tony hovered, chest heaving, systems overloaded, but alive. He realized with relief and lingering fear that they had survived, for now. But the Upside Down had tested them, and it had learned. Every victory here was temporary. Every pause was an opportunity for the darkness to return stronger, smarter, deadlier. And somewhere, in the distance, beyond the flickering lights and warped buildings, a whisper echoed, softer this time, but no less chilling. "You have won this round. But the game is far from over." What if the fight to save Hawkins wasn't just about defeating monsters, but about proving that hope could exist in a world designed to crush it? The streets of the Upside Down had quieted, but the silence was heavy, oppressive, as if the darkness itself was holding its breath. Tony Stark hovered above the warped town square, repulsors flickering, systems still strained from the previous assault. 11 hovered nearby, exhausted but alert, psychic energy simmering like a faint shield around them. Collie and the stranger in black hand-silver armor moved like shadows, scanning for threats, while Will clung to Tony, small and fragile but unbroken. The portal at the heart of the fissure pulsed gently now, stabilized, but not entirely safe. Tony could feel the residual energy radiating from it, a reminder that this world was never truly contained. Every shadow, every tendril, every echo was a testament to the Upside Down's resilience. He looked at 11. 11 nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "It's patient. It watches. It waits for mistakes. But you've given Hawkins a chance." Tony's chest tightened as he looked at Will. "Yeah, a chance," he echoed softly. He realized then that surviving this wasn't just about fighting monsters. It was about giving people the opportunity to survive, to grow, to fight back themselves. From the shadows, a faint ripple drew Tony's attention. He tensed, but it wasn't a monster this time. It was a small group of kids emerging from hiding, shaking but alive. Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and even Jonathan stepped into the warped light, faces pale but determined. Tony felt a surge of relief tempered by exhaustion. Every life mattered. Every victory, no matter how small, was worth the fight. But even as hope flickered, the darkness stirred in the distance, a reminder that this was not over. The Upside Down was patient, intelligent, adaptive. Every maneuver, every blast, every attempt to stabilize it had been catalogued, studied, learned from. It would return not tomorrow, not next week, but inevitably. Tony looked at the portal one last time, then back at the children, at 11, at Collie, at the stranger who had fought alongside them without hesitation. "We did what we could," he muttered, voice low but steady. "Now, we survive, we rebuild, and we prepare. Because this thing doesn't play fair." 11 smiled faintly, exhausted but resolute. "And we'll be ready next time." Will looked up at Tony, eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. You saved us." Tony crouched slightly, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "No, kid. You saved yourself. I just made sure nothing got in your way." He allowed himself a small, rare smile, and maybe learned that some fights you don't face alone. The camera would pan outward, showing Hawkins from above the town, fractured but standing. The sky still darkened with lingering remnants of the upside down, yet faint beams of light breaking through. In the distance, shadows flickered briefly, hinting that the darkness still lingered, watching, waiting. But for now, there was victory, fragile and hard-earned. Tony took a deep breath, the suit systems humming, and for the first time since entering this world, he allowed himself a moment of quiet. Hawkins had survived. The children were alive. The monsters had been held back for now. And as the group made their way back through the twisted streets, Tony realized that maybe there were battles worth fighting, even when the odds seemed impossible. Battles that tested courage, will, and the bonds between people. Battles that reminded him that heroism wasn't just about suits, technology, or firepower. It was about standing for something greater than yourself. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, a whisper lingered. "You have delayed me, not defeated me. I will return." Tony Stark's eyes narrowed, a challenge, a warning, and somewhere deep inside, he felt the spark of determination ignite. The Upside Down could wait. He would be ready. Hawkins would survive. They had to. The darkness might be eternal, but so was the human spirit. The camera pans to the horizon, where the first faint rays of light break through the lingering gloom, symbolizing hope in a world designed to crush it. And Tony Stark, exhausted but resolute, looks to the future, knowing that some battles are never truly over, but some victories, no matter how fragile, are worth every sacrifice. The screen fades to black. The end.